Hello, and welcome back to Salem Witch Trials Daily. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
I'm Sarah Jack. Today we're stepping away from the courtroom drama to look at the ink that was spilled alongside the blood. We're analyzing a collection of primary documents, books, letters, and critiques that show how the narrative of 1692 shifted from terrified fear and panic to deep regret.
It's really a timeline of a war of words. It starts with the absolute conviction that the devil was invading New England and ends with the realization that the colony had made a terrible, fatal mistake.
Exactly. And it begins with Reverend Deodat Lawson in March of 1692. Lawson gives us the raw eyewitness terror. He arrived in Salem Village and saw what he believed was Mary Walcott actually being bitten by invisible forces, leaving visible teeth marks.
It wasn't just bites, right? Lawson recorded Abigail Williams actually yelling at him in church when he was giving a sermon and claiming to see Goodwife Corey suckling a yellow bird on her fingers. He describes the accused biting their lips during examinations, which instantly caused the afflicted to cry out in pain. This document, a brief and true narrative, really set the stage. It validated the supernatural attacks as real physical events.
It was the first book on the Salem Witch Trials.
Came out April 5th, 2 months before the trials started.
But even while this panic was rising, there was an underground debate happening. We see this in a document by Reverend Samuel Willard, written as a dialogue between S, representing the Salem prosecution, and B, a skeptical voice from Boston.
That dialogue is fascinating because B argues that spectral evidence, seeing a ghost of the accused, isn't human evidence. He argues it's diabolical and that the devil could easily impersonate an innocent person. S is terrified that if they stop the trials, they endanger the land. But B warns that presumptions are just guesswork insufficient for taking a life.
That tension between saving the land and killing the innocent exploded in October 1692. The hangings had already happened. We have two major figures writing simultaneously, but with very different vibes: Thomas Brattle and Cotton Mather.
Let's start with Brattle. He writes a letter in October that is scathing. He attacks the touch test, where a witch's touch cures a fit, calling it sorcery and Salem superstition. He also points out the hypocrisy. Some people, like a justice's mother-in-law, were accused but never arrested.
Brattle also exposed the dark side of the confessions. He noted that violent, distracting, and dragooning methods, basically torture, were used to force people to confess, and that they recanted once the pressure stopped.
Meanwhile, you have the Reverend Cotton Mather publishing The Wonders of the Invisible World. He is doubling down. He argues that New England is the devil's territories and that Satan is enraged by the churches there. He defends the trials, detailing how the accused held hellish rendezvous with red bread and red drink.
Cotton is trying to justify the government's actions, but his father, Increase Mather, effectively ends them with his essay, Cases of Conscience.
This is a turning point. Increase Mather admits that yes, the devil can appear in the shape of an innocent, even godly person. This shattered the reliability of spectral evidence. He famously concludes that it is better for 10 suspected witches to escape than for one innocent person to be condemned.
Once that door was opened, the regret started pouring in. By 1697, Reverend John Hale, who had been there from the beginning, wrote a modest inquiry. He admits that they walked in clouds and darkness. He apologizes, fearing that innocent blood was shed because they relied on unsafe principles like the touch test and spectral sight.
And if Hale was the apology, Robert Calef was the attack dog. In 1700, Calef published More Wonders of the Invisible World, which was a direct rebuttal to Cotton Mather, and Calef didn't hold back. He called the afflicted accusers a parcel of possessed, distracted, or lying wenches.
Calef really tears into the theology also. He argues that Cotton Mather gave the devil too much power, attributes that belong only to God. Calef blames the clergy for the deluge of blood, specifically pointing a finger at Mather's writings for fueling the fear.
Finally, we have to mention the outsider's perspective. Thomas Maule, a Quaker, wrote Truth Held Forth and Maintained in 1695. He saw the witchcraft trials not as a satanic plot, but as divine judgment against the Puritans for how they persecuted the Quakers.
Maule turns the tables completely. He says the persecutors themselves are the real witches because they are in rebellion against God. It's a powerful reminder that while the Puritans were looking for devils in the shadows, their critics felt that real evil was the intolerance in the courtroom.
From Lawson's initial terror to increased Mather's caution, and finally to Calef's rage and Hale's sorrow, these documents map the psychological collapse of the witch trials.
It shows how dangerous it was when fear overrode evidence.
Join us tomorrow as we look into Governor Sir William Phipps.